Hi guys, this is Jackie Cooper with JCooperTravels, and today I am super excited to have Grant here because he's calling us all the way down from the tip of Africa, and he has a project that's close to my heart. It deals with conservation, and it deals with protecting the rhinos. We know that so many animals are endangered right now, and when my daughter and I traveled over to Tanzania and we're on a safari, we were fortunate enough to see some of the rhinos, but it's really critical right now that we support conservation, that we support Project Rhino. And Grant, thank you so much for being on here. I know there might be a lag when we talk, and we're going to kind of work right through that because what you're sharing with us is so important. Thank you so much, Grant, for coming on. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you got started in the conservation area?
Yeah, pleasure, Jackie. Thank you for this opportunity to chat to some Americans and all those across the globe. I came to conservation through growing up on a farm. It was a cattle farm and a goat farm, domestic animals, but there was always a fair amount of other wildlife around. But you know, in previous years, hunters and our forefathers had decimated every animal that we had in the region. And there was very little animals left. And what we've done is almost a Noah's Ark point of view, where we've brought the animals back from the brink of extinction and reintroduced them to our farms.
So I see in the notes that you shared with me that English is not your first language. What was your first language?
My first language was the vernacular, which is basically the indigenous language. It's called Xhosa. Now, I'm sure you can't pronounce that very well because it is a click language. And it's the language of Nelson Mandela, our great former leader who died tragically. Obviously, he was an icon. Most people know Nelson Mandela as one of the Nobel Peace Prize winners, but he was, I grew up on this farm where I learned this language, and Xhosa is the click language, very much like the Bushman or the Kalahari. And when you pronounce it in your mouth, you have to have a very particular.
So what is your favorite phrase in the Xhosa language or word?
Yeah, it's always a difficult one. You'll see in the other interview, I was asked by another journalist, and I said the first one I remembered was Sanokucha, which means I was 2 years old, and I stamped my knife and fork on the table and shouted to all the people that were serving us, Sanokucha, which means, God damn it, bring the food quickly. And everybody ran in different circles, and they could not believe that this toddler could speak their language as well as they could.
So when did you know that you wanted to become a conservation activist?
It was a natural progression. Obviously, I stopped hunting because I think hunters, we're all born with a bit of hunt in us. You know, we like to stalk and prey on certain things, even if it's a bird and we have to catch the bird in the garden, you know, and we think we're not going to harm it. We stalk upon them like your cat would do, or like a mountain lion would do in Colorado. And I went and maimed an animal, and unfortunately, fortunately for me, I turned against not hunting, but turned against killing things myself. And it was a natural thing how over the years I tried farming and realized that conservation, tourism, watching things rewild, making more habitat, more space for them was my passion.
So what specifically drew you to rhino conservation?
I guess, Jackie, this is it's a very strange conundrum, because I think that rhinos have been around the planet for 50 to 60 million years, and we don't have dinosaurs around anymore, but we have rhinos. Sorry, we lost you?
No,
No.
you're fine. I just shared on the screen with the African Conservation Trust Project Rhino picture that so people could see what you're working with. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So effectively, there's a couple of pictures on there, rhino, and the bottom one is a rhino and elephant, which there's a big debate as to whether elephants aren't my favorite animals. I've done a lot of work with them as well. And there are many elephants in Africa, but we are losing them fast. There was a few million, and now there's 370,000 left in Africa. So as much as rhinos are endangered in smaller numbers, African elephants are losing habitat at an alarming rate. So we have to preserve all our mega herbivores, as we call them.
So I know that you wrote a book, and can you tell us a little bit more about the book, and also how people can get involved to help you with the Project Rhino?
Yeah, I wrote a book out of just telling a story of my life, really, and it was a very ordinary story, brilliantly written by a ghostwriter called Graham Spence, who'd written several other animal-related books, some on the New Orleans tragedy and others on Haiti, I think it was, and one called The Elephant Whisperer. And they're true life stories on people that have done something with animals. Lawrence Anthony did it with elephants. And I haven't really, I'm not saying that I've done it with rhinos. And the title is very flattering. It's called Saving the Lost Rhinos. And it's really not me saving them. It's my walk and story about whether we're saving the lost 30,000 or 20,000 or 5,000 or one, we are saving the lost rhinos. And it's a number of us that are doing that. I'm merely just one of them in the cog. So that was the title of my book, and it's a yarn. It's something that every person in the world can read. If you have a dog or a cat or a budgie and you like animals or you like humans, and you like the interaction between life and animals, you'll read it and enjoy it. I don't think it's not complicated. It's just basically the human tragedy and the animal tragedy that I encounter in my daily life.
So I guess one of the fascinations about rhinos are their horns, and so that probably is what is leading to their tragic demise, because of some of the popular beliefs as to what the horns can do. Do you want to talk about that and how you're helping prevent some of the illegal trade?
Absolutely. Yeah, obviously their horns are an iconic part of a rhino. Without their horns, they're a shadow of their former self. And people have exploited that through a 1,000-million-year-old myth, or whatever you like to call it, with dagger handles of Yemen. And when they're polished, rhino horns can be quite beautifully polished. They look like, a piece of bone, actually. But all it is just hair. It's compressed hair called keratin, like your fingernail. And it grows back unlike ivory. But unfortunately, they decided the people that trade this stuff, or trade rhino horn, decided to put a huge value on it. And to do that, they have to kill the animal. And, that has led to us losing, 9,000 rhinos in the last 2 decades, tragically. And because because of other things like habitat and people's greed, they're on a downward spiral towards extinction. Until we put the brakes on, yeah, we're not going to be able to stop them going extinct.
Are the governments trying to, how are the governments trying to stop the illegal trade?
All the governments in the world, including the US, you know, we went to Vietnam under the Barack Obama administration in a thing called Operation Game Change, which was fighting animal and human trafficking, by the way. And so, yes, the whole world under CITES, under governance, you know, under the big organizations of the WWFs or the WCNs or the National Geographics, everybody is trying to do a good job. But you must remember, in Africa, the corruption through bad leadership and all sorts of things have led to, you know, no governor, no corporate governance. People saw that as an exploitation measure, and people are starving. So once starvation creeps in and bribery and corruption, there's no more structure in the world or in Africa. And so has Africa lost its population of animals as you go from the south, from the north, down through the Sahara, through the Central Africa. Yes, there's some amazing places that, like the migration in Tanzania and Kenya, and places in the Congo which people can't get to, that have still got some real animal places left. But the rest of Africa is just a bloodbath, and unfortunately the animals go first and then the people. But you know, I think with the organizations and the governments are doing a pretty decent job, but we up against new challenges all the time, and obviously COVID was one that we never expected, because we rely on tourism to save these things, and tourism is taking a big knock.
So you bring up COVID, and that's impacted. So can you talk about how you've been involved with, you know, feeding and what other, you know, everything else, and how people might be able to help support, again, the project because of even remotely, you know, what you're doing?
Yeah, so Jackie, we because people were in lockdown, the animals weren't, you know, they started exploiting. We discovered, having traveled around during lockdown, because we couldn't just let the animals fend for themselves. Since we've had to, you know, since we've put the parameters like fencing and ecosystems in check, now all of a sudden the people that manage them were in lockdown, and none of us had ever done this before, so there was an overreaction. And after a month, people started saying, well, where to now, you know? And yes, they had masks, and yes, but they were starving, and there was no work, and all the casual people that have periphery jobs did not have those jobs anymore, and all the crafters. And so we went around assessing the situation, and we found a python killed, a beautiful python that was 30 years old, killed for meat, and then another antelope. And the people just said, look, if we don't get help, we're going to live off the land. And therefore we started a thing called Feeding the Wildlife Community. Now, a lot of the other feeding schemes all involved urban areas, but we took the feeding to the adjacent parks and game reserves where we work generally all year. And these were our people, not the people in the urban cities. And we started collecting money from all over, and we've had a big support base in the US as well. We nearly at 500,000 meals of porridge. We only really supply porridge. Some people do food parcels, but we only do a specific thing in that area to conservation, and showing them that conservation really cares.
You know, when we think about COVID and here in the United States, it's definitely impacted so many people, but we get news of it in the urban areas, but we don't always learn about how COVID has impacted areas which are outside of, you know, that are definitely impacted by the tourism, the people not coming and things like that. There's definitely an intense ripple effect. So in terms of, I know there are future projects that are close to your heart, but again, is there ways that people can help you directly to both from the feeding project, from saving the rhinos? What's the best way if someone really wanted to kind of reach out and support you and the efforts that you're involved with?
Jackie, yeah, very simply, you know, we have give and gain accounts. We have allegiances with some American US 501(c) donor portals where you can get your tax rebate. If you're going to be giving small amounts, and a small amount in the US is a massive amount in South Africa.
Yeah.
So you never underestimate $10, you know. $10 is going to feed 160 people, really. So we call it a rand, which is $1 at 160. So $10 is on today's currency, is going to feed 164 people. You know,
I will definitely. I will definitely on the podcast for everyone share in the text above the podcast as well as on the YouTube video information on how you can either contact me for more information or contact Grant, so that way you can get involved with supporting the conservation efforts. I mean, he is one of many who are in this field, and we need to remember that just because of COVID, these efforts don't stop. And like you said, Grant, the animals are out there, and when we have created a certain ecosystem for them, they rely on us to continue that ecosystem. So what you're doing is extremely important. Is there any other last minute things that you can think of that you would like to share? I'm so happy that we were able to talk today.
Yeah, you know, on the 15th and 16th, SBN Stop Poaching Now is also doing a big e-race extend. So, and I'm very involved. I'm one of the beneficiaries. Our organization is not me personally. So I'll be doing interviews from the field, from whatever we're doing. This is started by Heidi Jo Markle, who owns in California. They have a big organization called Stop Poaching Now, and she's kind of in touch with Hollywood people, and they're trying to. I think it's a $25 donation to participate, run, walk, jog, stay online, watch interviews, but on a Saturday, Sunday. 15th, 16th April, really get behind conservation and all those people that are making a difference to the world. And wherever you are, you can be in Australia or in Asia or in Europe, you will be supporting all these things, you know. And yeah, we're not only feeding people, you know, we also dehorning. I know that you don't like cutting horns off on animals, but the reason why we do it, Jackie, is purely because we're trying to give that animal the only chance, perhaps where the security is not as good, to not be killed. And the horn will grow back, and its next generation will still have a horn. And when we resolve this problem or push the demand down so much that there is no point in killing an animal for a horn, then we'll stop all that and have put that energy back into breeding or other conservation methods.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I appreciate your time. I know that you'll reach back out to me to get me all that current information about the event you just shared, so I can also share it out. Thank you so much for being on here, and thank you everyone for listening to this podcast. Remember to subscribe so you can continue to hear all the various topics, both in the conservation area as well as in other areas. Thank you so much for your time, Grant.
Pleasure, Jackie. Thank you.